Hi, I'm Clara. Today, I'm going to tell you my story. But before I continue, please share and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Growing up with my older brother Richard wasn't easy. 3 years my senior, he always had to be the star. Our parents ran a successful printing business, and Richard was groomed to take over while I was expected to support from the sidelines. Clara, bring your brother some water. He's reviewing the quarterly numbers with Dad, Mom would say, even when I was studying for finals. It's fine, I'd reply, setting my textbooks aside. Richard would smirk as I entered Dad's office. Thanks, sis. Maybe someday you'll understand what we're doing in here. He'd wink at Dad, who would chuckle. I graduated top of my class with a business degree, while Richard barely made it through with his marketing diploma. Still, when I asked to join the family business, Dad hesitated. We already have positions filled, he explained. Richard's been working here for 2 years already? But I have ideas for expansion, I insisted. Digital printing is growing, Clara, Mom interrupted. Maybe you should look at other companies. Get some experience. Richard nodded. Yeah, sis. Learn the ropes elsewhere, then maybe you can come work for me someday. You really don't see it, do you? I asked quietly. How unfair this is. Dad sighed. This isn't about fair, Clara. It's about what's best for the business. I worked for competitors, learned everything I could, and saved every penny. When a small print shop went up for sale across town 5 years later, I bought it. My parents were surprised at the grand opening of Clara's Digital Solutions. You bought a business? Dad asked. Where did you get the money? I saved, I replied simply. Richard circled the space, eyeing my equipment. Cute little operation, sis. Need any advice from Big Brother? I think I'm good, thanks. Within 2 years, my business had tripled in size. I specialized in digital printing services that my parents' company, now run entirely by Richard after Dad's retirement, had ignored. That's when Richard started calling regularly, asking about my clients, my processes. We should collaborate, he suggested over coffee. Merge our services. Why would I do that? I'm doing fine on my own. Families should stick together, Richard insisted, his smile tight. Dad always wanted that. Really? Because I don't remember Dad wanting us together when he pushed me out. Dad wanted you to run the family business. He never made space for me. Richard's expression hardened. That's not true. You chose to leave. No, I was pushed out. And now you're struggling because you didn't adapt. He leaned forward, dropping his friendly facade. Look, Clara, Dad's company, our family legacy, is in trouble. You've got the digital side figured out. I've got the traditional clients. You mean I could save you from your own mismanagement? A week later, Mom called. Richard's having some cash flow problems. Maybe you could help? How exactly? I asked. A loan, perhaps? Or a partnership? Your brother mentioned your company's doing well? I sighed. Mom, Richard had everything handed to him and still couldn't make it work. He has the boys to support since the divorce. That's not my responsibility. That night, I received a text from Richard. We need to talk about a merger. Dad's legacy depends on it. I finally replied. Not my problem. I offered suggestions years ago that you ignored. 3 days later, my assistant Lisa handed me an envelope containing a letter from Richard's lawyer, claiming I had used proprietary information from my parents' company and demanding I either merge with them or face legal action. I called my attorney immediately. This is ridiculous. I worked for 3 other companies before starting my own. It's a scare tactic, she agreed. They're desperate. So what do we do? I asked, pacing my office. Nothing yet. Let them make the next move. If they file an actual lawsuit, we'll respond, but I doubt they will. They have no case. She paused. But Clara, be careful. Desperate people do desperate things. Later that week, my nephew Mark called. Aunt Clara, Dad's been acting weird, drinking a lot, talking about how you stole his business ideas. That's not true, Mark. I know. He's planning something, Aunt Clara. He and Jason were looking at your business paperwork, talking about forcing you to sell. I thanked Mark. then upgraded my security system and moved all important documents to a safe in my home office. A week later, my phone buzzed with a security alert while I was at dinner with Lisa and Tom. Richard and Jason were breaking into my office. Tom leaned over to look at my phone. "Is that your brother?" "Unfortunately," I said, watching the footage. Richard was jiggling the lock while Jason nervously looked up and down the street. "Should we call the police?" Lisa asked. "Let's see what they're after first," I replied. The security feed showed them entering my office. Richard immediately went to my desk, yanking open drawers and rifling through papers. "Where would she keep the incorporation documents?" he asked Jason. "I don't know, Dad. Maybe we should just go." "Not until we find something we can use," Richard snapped. "Check that filing cabinet." "They won't find anything important," I assured my colleagues. "All the critical documents are at my house." "Still, this is breaking and entering," Lisa pointed out. I nodded and called the police. Officers arrived within minutes and arrested them both on the spot. Richard called me from jail the next morning. "How could you do this to family? Having your own nephew arrested?" "You broke into my business, Richard. We were just looking for evidence that you stole Dad's clients." "I never stole anything. You'll find very little client overlap." "I need you to drop the charges," he insisted. "Jason can't have a record. You should have thought about that before using him in your scheme." Richard's voice turned threatening. "If you don't help us, you'll regret it." I hung up and immediately called my lawyer to report the threat. "Document everything," she advised, "and be extra cautious. Get a restraining order immediately." 3 nights later, around 3 a.m., I was startled awake by a loud crash. Someone was breaking down my front door. I locked myself in my bedroom and called 911. I heard voices in the hallway. Where would she keep them? That was Richard. "Check the office first." And that was Mark, who had warned me earlier. "She's got to be here somewhere." The third voice belonged to Jason. I texted Lisa. "Richard and nephews broke into my house. Police coming." My heart was racing as they ransacked my home. I pressed my ear against the bedroom door, trying to track their movements. "Found anything yet?" Richard's voice was urgent. "Nothing in here," Mark replied. "Just regular paperwork." "Dad, maybe we should go." Jason sounded nervous. My bedroom door handle jiggled. "Clara, we know you're in there," Richard called. "Open up. We just want to talk." "Go away," I shouted. "The police are coming." "We just need the company paperwork," Richard said. "The ownership documents. Dad says they're supposed to be shared." "That's a lie. My company is separate from yours. Dad says you signed an agreement years ago that any business you started would be part of the family company." "I never signed anything like that." The door shuddered as someone slammed against it. "We're not leaving without those papers!" Sirens wailed outside. All 3 were apprehended in my front yard. The following morning, Detective Morales showed me security footage they'd recovered. "Your brother has been planning this for weeks," she explained. "We found text messages detailing the plan to steal your documents and forge your signature on transfer papers. My nephew Mark warned me about something like this." "Interesting," she replied, showing me the messages. "Because according to these, he was the one who came up with the plan in the first place." I read an exchange where Mark suggested getting my signature on transfer papers and offered to warn me about a break-in to gain my trust. He played both sides. "We see this kind of family betrayal more often than you'd think," Detective Morales said, shaking her head. "Money brings out the worst in people." "What happens now?" I asked. "They're all facing serious charges: breaking and entering, attempted theft, and in your brother's case, violating the restraining order you filed. The DA is taking this very seriously." When my parents called later that day, they were angry. "How could you have Richard and the boys arrested?" Mom demanded. "They broke into my house." "Family problems should stay within the family," Dad insisted. "They were going to steal my company, Dad. The company I built without any help from any of you." "Richard says you stole ideas from our business," Dad countered. "That's not true. I offered those ideas to you years ago, and you rejected them." Dad finally asked, What will it take for you to drop the charges? I won't drop them. Richard and the boys committed serious crimes. You're tearing this family apart, Mom sobbed. No, Mom. Richard did that when he decided my success threatened him, and you both enabled it every step of the way. 2 days later, my lawyer called with news. Richard wants to make a deal. He'll plead guilty to reduced charges if you agree not to sue him civilly. What about Mark and Jason? Jason will get probation. Mark is willing to testify against his father. Says Richard coerced him. I laughed bitterly. That's convenient. Does the prosecutor know Mark was the mastermind? They do. He's turning state's evidence. First one to flip gets the best deal. So they're all betraying each other now, I said. Charming family I have. The court date is set for next month, my lawyer continued. Are you prepared to testify? Absolutely, I replied. I want them to face consequences for once in their lives. The trial was brief. With the security footage, text messages, and Mark's testimony, the case was open and shut. Richard was sentenced to 18 months for breaking and entering, attempted theft, and violating the restraining order I'd filed. Jason received probation and community service. Mark got a suspended sentence in exchange for his testimony. My parents didn't speak to me for months. When they finally called, it was with a business proposal. Richard's company is failing without him, Dad explained. We thought perhaps you'd consider buying it. Why would I do that? It's still the family legacy, Mom insisted. Your grandfather built it from nothing. Don't you want to preserve that? Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to bail out the company you never thought I was good enough to run, after Richard tried to steal mine? We're not asking for charity, Dad said stiffly. We'd sell it at market value. Market value for a failing business isn't much, but yes, I'll buy it. On one condition, you both publicly acknowledge that you were wrong about me. What exactly do you want us to say? Dad asked, his voice tight. I want you to tell the entire staff that I was always capable of running the business, that you made a mistake choosing Richard over me, and that my ideas for digital expansion were right all along. There was a long pause before Dad responded. I can admit I underestimated you. That's not enough. Dad sighed heavily. Fine, we'll do it. Just help us save the business your grandfather built. 6 months later, I stood in the office that had once been my father's, then Richard's. Now it was mine. The company merger had gone smoothly, with most employees grateful for the stability I brought. Lisa knocked on my door. Your 3 o'clock is here. Mark entered, looking nervous in his suit. Thanks for seeing me, Aunt Clara. This is a business meeting. You can call me Miss Bennett here. Yes, Miss Bennett. I appreciate the interview opportunity. Let's be clear. You're here because you have experience with the company's systems, not because we're family. I understand. Family loyalty clearly means something different to you than it does to me. Mark flushed. I made mistakes. I let Dad manipulate me. According to the evidence, you were the one doing the manipulating. You orchestrated the whole thing. That's not entirely accurate. Save it, I interrupted. I've seen the text messages. Why are you even considering hiring me then? He asked, genuinely confused. Because unlike your father, I believe in second chances. But make no mistake, this is your only one. I want to make amends. I'm not like my father. No, you're potentially more dangerous because you're smarter than he is. You'll start in the warehouse learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. One mistake, one hint of disloyalty, and you're done. After he left, Lisa asked, Are you sure about hiring him? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, I replied. I want him where I can see him. And maybe, just maybe, he can learn what building something actually means instead of trying to steal it. And if he doesn't? Then he'll learn that I'm not someone to cross twice, I said firmly. That evening, as I locked up the office, I felt a sense of completion. Not just because I'd succeeded, but because I'd stood my ground when it mattered most. Richard would be released in a year. I'd already decided I wouldn't press charges when he inevitably violated the restraining order to confront me. I wanted him to see what I'd built from the ashes of his failures. My phone rang. It was Jason. Aunt Clara, I heard you hired Mark. I was wondering if maybe you could give me a chance too? Unlike Mark, Jason had never warned me or tried to play both sides. He'd simply followed his father's lead. Why should I trust you, Jason? I asked quietly. I know I messed up, he replied. Dad said we were just going to talk to you. When I realized what was happening, I was scared, but I didn't know how to stop it. I could hear the sincerity in his voice. Come to my office tomorrow at noon, I finally said. We'll discuss possibilities. As I drove home that night, I thought about the scars this whole ordeal had left. But I also felt a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in Richard's shadow. I wasn't trying to prove myself to parents who couldn't see my worth. I was standing firmly in the light I'd created for myself. What would you do if you were in my position? Would you give Richard's sons a second chance to prove themselves, or would you keep your family and business completely separate after such a betrayal?